My dad and I, one, his relationship with me on the field was never like it was always so good. Like it was more of like, what can we do as a team? Not like we're working hard enough. He would just always be like, hey, look, like I know what you want and this is what you told me, and I know how to get you there. So trust me. And that's kind of what our relationship was like from 8 to 8, and he knew when to outsource the coaching. He knew like, hey, look, like he's getting older and he needs to hear from somebody else. It wasn't like a total power of like, I'm your dad. It was so much more about just like keeping our relationship healthy, making sure things working. And it was just such a great time like for us to be together.
Hello, and welcome to Catching You, a dad and daughter softball journey. I'm Rusty, a dad who's been in the dugout and on the sidelines.
And I'm Lacey, the daughter whose journey through softball has been filled with incredible wins, tough losses, and so many lessons both on and off the field.
For the past 16 years, we've navigated the highs and lows of softball together, from the local fields to national tournaments and everything in between.
From the challenges of recruitment during COVID to the mental and emotional roller coaster that comes with being a student athlete, we will be sharing the perspectives of both a parent and athlete and firsthand experience of the impact of sports on mental health and the importance of support from the sidelines.
Welcome back, everybody, to Catching You. I'm your co-host, Rusty Ham. With me is my other co-host, Lacey Ham, my daughter. Lacey, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
And we have a special guest with us. Her name is Margo Hurt, and I want to get the last name right. Ostarkey. Did I say it right, Margo?
You got there. You were halfway there. And it had a hard right turn. Ostrich. It's kind of like I think I always tell people like it's like ostrich, like ostrich. But yeah,
Okay.
no worries. Just call me Coach Oz. That's the easier way to go. Or Coach Margo.
Coach Margo, right? We'll get into that in a second. So, Coach Margo, she played for Texas A&M Corpus Christi out there in Texas from
Yes.
06 to 2010.
Right. Go Islanders.
Go Islanders, yeah. And she's a head coach at Deccan Baptist School. She's a head
Yeah.
softball coach there. And you coach volleyball too, right? Is that what my
Yes.
writers
We get to have the privilege of coaching 2 sports, and volleyball is the next best thing I know about of it compared to so and it's a
Very
lot of
cool.
fun, and it's middle school. So I mean a lot of it is just, the introducing them to the sport too. So
Yeah. And then Coach Margo also has a very large following on TikTok. I think you're nearing 27,000 followers. It's under Softball with Margo, right? Can you
right.
describe that a little bit?
So what happened is I was training people like full time. I was um doing that when I was single, and then I got married and I had babies, and just the time frame of like me going and like training full time and being like full time employee somewhere else was not obtainable whatsoever. So I just like, you know what? After I got like my bearings with the second child, I was like, let me just like start posting videos online and seeing like if anybody remotely cares what I have to say. And come to find out, it's helped out like, a couple people, and that's really what the goal is. I mean, there was no actual like plan of attack or like this is my company, blah blah blah. It was more like I have a passion for this. I can't be there physically, so what can I do to help the sport grow and share my experiences, good and bad?
Right.
And people can relate to that stuff. And if you're real and you're like a genuine person on that app, I feel like it will come right back to you tenfold. So started posting videos and didn't really know what the heck I was doing. I'm not like a social media guru by any means, but as you do them and you learn, you progressively get better at anything you're doing multiple times, and here we are now talking on y'all's podcast. So
Well, there you
it's
go.
really been not just a great way to like share your knowledge, but it's also been an awesome like hobby to be creative and use my brain like a different way because world is changing. You have to be good at social media to get out there. And I've met a ton of cool people, including y'all
Yeah.
too. So it's really been my husband and I have gotten to experience a lot of cool things. Like literally, like we were spin up bananas like 2 months in December, just like chilling with them in Corpus, and we've gotten to do like a ton of I would have you can't even like pay for, just experiences that we've
Right.
had. So it's definitely cool.
Very cool. So talk about the beginnings of Coach Margo, the early days, the rec ball days. And then just kind of just describe your journey as a softball player and how you got to college and all that.
Yeah, so I started playing when I was little, of course, like anyone else. My dad was like a huge part of that. And he was, I've always been a hard worker, but my dad was even more of a harder worker than I was. And so when I wanted to, take off or whatever, he was just kind of that like peace of mind behind me, like, hey, like if you want this, like we're here and we'll help you. But if you don't, like you're only going to get whatever you put into the sport, out of it. So obviously played high school ball. When I was playing, there was really like no 14s or 16s. It was like 12s or 18s. And so that was like a really big difference than compared to what it is now, because you either went from like playing like literally 12U like little kid ball, and then you were playing with the big girls. Like you were just like thrown into
Yeah.
it. It's like a varsity sport.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, so I played in high school. We didn't really play travel ball that much when I was in like 10U, 12U. We played Little League. And that's what we did. And because there really wasn't that many girls playing, and the sport has grown like exponentially since then. But played in high school. We have a very competitive high school district where I grew up in Texas, and ended up getting recruited to A&M Corpus. Played there for 4 years. I consider myself super blessed to have that opportunity to be on scholarship, to have those experiences, meet those girls. I mean, all the things that you could ever think of. Like, I found my best fit at A&M Corpus. It wasn't the biggest place I could have gone, but it was exactly where I needed to be academically, athletically. Like, I played every single game but 2 games, like my whole 4 years, So
Yeah.
that just goes to show you, like, it's not really about how big you go. It's like what fits your needs.
Yeah.
After that, I immediately jumped into coaching. It was like, what am I going to do now? Like, I have nothing, like my life is softball. Like, I love it so much. And so I started doing private lessons. I mainly focus on pitching and hitting. That's like my forte. That's what I did in college. I pitched and then I hit for the pitchers that didn't hit. And obviously, some of the hardest skill sets you could have is pitching and hitting. And so I just constantly had to get better at it. And you don't always, even if you're playing in college, you don't always have the coaches that you need to get through those hurdles and humps and stuff like that. Like I didn't even have a pitching coach my junior and senior year in
Oh
college.
wow.
They had like 2 fielding coaches and a head coach. So, you're struggling with your snaps, you're struggling with your, like breaks. Like, hey, girl, hope you can figure it out. Get
There
on
you go.
YouTube or something. So, it
Crazy.
definitely sucked at the time, or was unfortunate at the time. But in the long run, like it made me learn how mechanics are, how my fingers should be, all that kind of stuff. So, it made me a better coach, I guess, down the road. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So, got some select teams going, started doing that. Did that for a long time. I had like a 12U and a 16s, and then I had a 14s and an 18s, and I would just rotate weekends. And I was at the ballpark all the time. But when you're single and you have nothing else to do, I mean, what are you gonna do but be at the ballpark?
Right.
And then I found like the love of my life. So I had to like kind of take a backseat to that because I wanted to spend time with him, had babies, and then here we are.
There you are.
So yeah, the goal is obviously to let every girl know like they can be whoever they want to be in the sport, but also like how much work it takes. Cause as
Yeah.
you know, and as Lacey knows, like this is a game of extreme failure. Like
Here.
I've learned so much about working hard through it, and it's the most fair sport you can have because, it never, you can have a little luck, but mostly it's going to be work that you put into it.
Right. Yeah. And I think later on we're going to ask you some questions about the recruiting because you have some TikTok videos on recruiting and what teams to play on and what teams should you be on if you want to go to certain colleges, right?
Right.
That's what attracted me to your content because you started talking about who to play for. If you want to go to Oklahoma or if you want to go to Oregon, you have to play on these teams, and Lacey and that. But
Yeah, so I mean, I was a Baptist my whole life.
Oh, wow.
So I had those certain colleges were the ones that like we're kind of filtered into. But like later on, as I started playing for different teams and started noticing like my athletic ability, it was more like, all right, like these are the schools that I'm looking at. These are where the opportunities are. This is where I'm gonna play, get playing time, get a good education. So now and then I found myself at San Jose State. So and I'm going into my senior year almost. So but like recruiting wise, my junior year was COVID. right right when my junior year started, COVID happened. We all went shut down, no coaches allowed at our games. So my whole thing was like posting videos on Twitter and emailing coaches nonstop. So, and I mean, you touched upon how social media is pretty important now. I mean, TikTok wasn't as big as it is now
No, it blew
during
up
COVID.
during COVID. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So like it was more just like funny videos of people, but now girls are like going on there and posting their content and posting their highlights and like sending it to coaches. So it's like it's definitely grown a lot more since I was recruited. And I mean, my recruitment process was a complete mess. So I'd love to hear your insight on like just the recruitment, like some advice you'd give some girls, um, just moving forward with the recruiting process now that social media is like even bigger than it really was.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of variables, and I don't think there's like one path to ever take. And I think that's what people want to hear is like, do A, then do B, then do C, and then it'll all work out. And that's just not the case at all. The point of the recruiting videos that I post is like, it's not rockets. There's only 24 hours in the day. There's only so much miles you can have, budgets to use, people that you know, and people are going to go with who they know, who they can trust. So Patty Gasso only has so many people that can work for her, right? And how many people does she have to filter through sending her people? Oh my gosh, this girl's so good. This girl's so good. Like she's got to go with what she knows, and that's just like reality. I guess that's what I was trying to like portray to these people. It's like it's not this magical potion that you drink or meat or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, there are exceptions to the rule, but at the end of the day, like you're only going to be recruited by so many people because of where you live, where you play, how good you are, how good your grades are. You could be a freaking stud, right? But if you can't get into the school don't care. They you still got to make your grades. And there's so many other girls playing now. So like when we were getting recruited back in 2005, 2006, the the narrative was like, "Oh, well, I'm gonna get athletic scholarships. I don't have to worry about my academics." And that's kind of what like my dad's generation was, and what the generation before me was like, "Dude, I'm an athlete. I don't have to be smart." Well, now you have to be smart and you have to be good at the sport because there's just so much competition. And for girls' sports, especially, like there's way too many girls that care about their grades. Like any athletic team that we had on campus, their GPAs were through the roof. The girls' sports were now boys, little different, right? So what I would say is, and I made a video kind of like, this is important, but this is more important. This is important, but it's more important than that, you know? And so there's a lot of things to look at. I would say one, like, um, if you are a catcher and they've already recruited 3 catchers, why are you looking at the, why are you gonna go be the 4th catcher on a team? Like you can look up all this stuff online. It's not rocket science where you can dissect their lineups, dissect their roster. It's all right there. If you live in Tennessee and they've never been to Oklahoma, they're through you unless you know some. Okay. And that's the exception. But these people only have a very short window now, especially with Division One. Now, when it comes to the social media stuff, it's a double-edged sword, okay? Because you could be posting too much about your swing, your emotion or whatever, and they're like, "Ooh, we don't like that. We don't know how to fix that, if I have to fix it." So in your recruiting process, that was the only outlet you had. You had to post stuff because you physically couldn't go and meet, them, right? Because it was COVID.
Yeah.
Now it's like, okay, you can go to these recruiting things and you can be seen in person. But if I can watch someone's video multiple times, all I'm doing is dissecting how bad it is. And that's kind of one of those things that you have to really, really be careful because you only want to put out your absolute best, not some BS 5, 6 hole hit. You need to hit a bomb and then post that. It needs to
Yeah.
be something like extreme to post because guess what? They don't care that you can hit 5, 6 goals. What they want is they want the long ball. They want you to be fast from home to first, and they want you to look like a freaking athlete. Because if you cannot run, move laterally, be an athlete, and like if they recruit you as a shortstop and you have to play left field, that's what they want. They want to see those things. So I would say your era of like posting and whatever has probably narrowed down into like that's not as it doesn't weigh as heavy, compared to going in front of these coaches, having someone call on your behalf, stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time I was being recruited by one school and it was during COVID and they're like, well, we can't offer you anything unless we see you in person and we can't see you in person. So I'm like, okay, so what do you want me to do?
Yeah. You're like, okay,
So
cool. So like, do I get like in a bubble suit and I get one of those big balls? And what do I do? Like get a
yeah,
tea? Like what do you want me to do? Yeah,
yeah.
that's tough. That's really
So
tough.
I'd be sending videos of my pitching lessons, of my games. I'm like wearing a mask while I'm playing a game. So it's like, come on, guys, like, what do you want me to do? But like you mentioned how it's like the people you know. And my coach at the time, when I was getting recruited, he knew the incoming coaches at San Jose State. And he's like, there's all these openings here at San Jose State. You need to reach out. You need to do this, this, this. And I mean, I got pretty quick contact with those coaches and was offered a good amount of money. So it's like it's definitely about people you know, and I'm kind of learning that
For sure.
along the way, and definitely plays a factor on who you play for. I mean, I was thankful I grew up in Southern California where softball was huge. I mean, you played in a very competitive high school district. My high school district was extremely competitive as well, and we ended up going to quarterfinals of CIF my senior year, which was really fun and awesome. But yeah, definitely about connections and who you play for, where you live. Totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Lacey, that was you went to the semifinals, right?
Oh, semifinals, yes.
And the girl that hit the home run is now at Oklahoma, so don't feel bad about that. Um,
Yeah.
so Margo, you and Devin Armand did a thing on the pros and cons of the video of social media. You touched upon the cons of the social media. I know you did some positives, but you touched about
Yeah.
a little bit of the cons is, you know, yes, you're posting these things, you want coaches to see your swing or your pitch, but then there's also some negatives with social media. What can you touch upon that a little bit?
We all take a risk of posting things online, right? So like I could post something and people can hate me and they could totally destroy my life. Whatever. Okay. Like there
Right.
are keyboard, what are they called? Keyboard bullies or whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But here's what I think too. If I'm playing at a high level and I'm seeing multiple swings from this person, I have more ammo to work with, right?
Yeah.
The other thing too is like if you are just let's just say you fail, which you're going to in a softball game and it's posted, people are just they're just I mean, they don't even care who you are. They're just like you're not even a human. So I think you can get really caught up in like what people are saying about you, even though they have no input or say on like how to fix it, who you are as a person, like how much work you put into it. So I never had that pressure as an athlete. No one even read about my game in the paper other than people that lived in Corpus and my mom and my dad. You know what I mean? And maybe like my friends that went to college. So now these girls that are playing on these big, huge stages, like I'm seeing their film like right after or right during, like people
Right.
are filming it and making their own opinion. I mean, I do that literally on TikTok for like almost a living now, So I think it is, you can get really caught up in like a really deep spiral if you let it. I think another thing is like when other college coaches, like, I mean, if I have a game footage of a whole team playing, like, there's so many things you can look at, like bad habits you can pick up on that they have, right? Oh wow, like they got 3 inside pitches that first at bat, like, or she goes inside every single first pitch strike. So there is a
Yeah.
lot more information. Now, can your players like use that information and be successful? I don't know. I like it's funny because like we'll be coaching these high schoolers and none of my high schoolers are like hardcore girls. They're just there to play the sport and have fun. And like one of my assistant coaches was like, oh yeah, like she's throwing a drop in every time and then she goes up. I was like, you know what? Don't tell them because that might be a little too much information to think about. I was like, we're like in this mindset where you just like need to see the ball, hit the ball, like less is more. Um I would also say that, there could be, we don't want anyone to feel like they're being attacked 24/7 online, but there are some like crazy. I posted a video recently and it's gone viral of these 3 little girls. They're just high school girls doing a dance and people just like totally ripping the slide to shreds. I'm like, what? Like, this slide is fine. It's a pop-up slide. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
So, um, I would say you can be very vulnerable, online, and I bet we've all learned that, the hard ways. Like some people just
Right.
love to tell you what they think, even it doesn't matter.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's pivot a little bit. Again, this is a father-daughter podcast, right? I caught my daughter when started when she was 7 years old. describe your relationship with your father. Did he catch you when you were pitching? Did he have, if you had a bad session, did he have bad body?
My poor dad and his shin, all those balls hit those shins. I mean, he did his absolute best. And really, when I got home from college, he's like, "I'm not catching you anymore, dude. Like, we'll just get you one of your friends. Like, I'm not taking that beating." Yeah. My dad and I, one, his relationship with me on the field was never like, it was always so good, like it was more of like, what can we do as a team? Not like, oh, working hard enough. He would just always be like, "Hey, look, like I know what you want and this is what you told me and I know how to get you there. So trust me." And that's kind of what our relationship was like from 8 to 8, and he knew when to outsource the coaching. He knew like, "Hey, look, like she's getting older and she needs to hear from somebody else." It wasn't like a total power of like, "I'm your dad." It was so much more about just like keeping our relationship healthy, making sure I was putting the work in. And it was just such a great time with like for us to be together. What, you know, you're so lucky, Lacey, to have a dad that like truly, I don't want to get like emotional. Dad, like a dad that's like so great, it's just so cool. No, my dad is like that. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like
I
you're
mean, he, I mean, because we kind of would listen to the coaches a little bit more on like the process and like how recruiting works, or like you should switch pitching coaches. Because I mean, we were kind of once we got into the recruiting process, it was kind of like new to us. So like, right, Dad, like we would listen to my travel ball coaches on what we should do, and like how we should go about like switching pitching coaches, or like what I should work on outside. And I feel like it was a really good relationship. I feel like because he was like an assistant coach on my high school team, and I mean he would sit in the corner and just do like our little book. Like he wouldn't really say anything while I was pitching, but like, "Hey, maybe you shouldn't have walked the first batter of the inning. Maybe you should spray
fair.
it."
That's fair.
I heard that. Well, like my head coach, like, "Come on, Lacey, like don't walk her, don't walk her." And he'd be a little bit more harsh, but my dad would be like, "Hey, like it's okay, just don't do that next time. I know you're better than that. Like, just keep going."
But it
So
wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like
no,
that. When
no.
young, I got on her a lot, right? I was not, my body language was bad. And I would throw back hard at her if she had a bad step. And, it
But
was not
it was
easy beginning.
it was
Well, we're
never
all human
I
too.
yeah. Yeah. Like, I understood later. I mean, I was only 12 at the time, but, later, that he knew I could be better than that, so
Of
he
course.
showed it in a different way. Um, and I understood that later, but that right then and there, I'm like, "Oh, she thinks I'm, like, a bad player, or, like, I I need to be better in this situation, and I just wanna impress my dad," like, all the time. I just wanna
Of
impress my
course.
dad. But it kinda got better, where he was like, "You're a hard worker. I know you can do better than that. Like, it's okay." Like, I'd have teammates talk to me about how their dads were just screaming at them after a game, like, "You went 0-4, blah, blah, blah." Like, they would always hear the car rides home. And like, after a bad game of mine, I'd just sit in the passenger seat and we'd be silent for like the first 30 minutes. And then I'd be like, "Okay, can we talk about the game now?" And then he's like, "Okay, now we can talk about it." So it was definitely more civil and calm. And I didn't feel pressure from him specifically. I would mostly put the pressure on myself. So, like, coming off that, like, was there like a specific obstacle you would face, um, like a moment in college and high school, and like any type? Is there a specific obstacle you found yourself like struggling to get past, or like you needed help to get past?
I mean, I still call my dad like every day. So yes, every day there's something that he could tell me how to be better. But the thing too is like I have two sisters and we are all three so different. So like my sister, the older one is like a brainiac. Like she had a totally different path. My mom and my dad never compared me and my sister. Then I have a younger sister who's like a track star. She's a thrower. She did hammer, chocolate discus, whatever, and she went to Ohio State for that. They knew how different we were personality wise and they knew how to pivot and also like what was going on in our lives, like stressors, relationships we had outside of friends, boyfriends, whatever. And so I think my dad would just do his best because he would just check in, I would tell you my transition from high school to college was tough. Just like being mature enough to handle as many innings as I was getting. I wasn't truly ready for that. And I didn't know when I got recruited, I was going to get literally half of the innings. And they didn't have anybody else. They had a recruit that had, decommitted JUCO transfer. And so she was supposed to share the time with me. At least that's what my understanding was. And come to find out, like, she didn't come. And so my dad was like, either you can stop and be like, oh, for you, or we can just go to work. And I'm like, all right, let's go to work. So that's what we did. We went home, we got, with our pitching coaches, and we definitely got better, but it was never something that, like, I felt, I couldn't do without, like, I needed my dad there, and I needed his not maybe physically there, but mentally, like, "Hey, like, I'm struggling with this, like, what should I do?" And he's like, "Let's get a game plan." Um, growing up, I think, like, when you're saying, like, 12, of course, your dad's still trying to, like, make you into those your dad's still trying to make you into a great person, and he's still trying to mold you into a hard worker and all that stuff, and, like, being, and knowing, like, to be tough when you have to be tough, and you can be sad when you need to be sad, and I think that's what my dad was trying to do at 12, like, there were some car rides, I was like, "Oh my god," like, we lived 10 minutes from the fields, and I'm like, "This is the longest ride of our lives." He's like, "You worked trying, blah, blah, blah," but really, he was just, like, setting the stage for me to push myself when I was by myself. And I feel like after 12, when you get to 14, that's more of like, okay, now we're managing. We're not like micromanaging. Now we're just like, okay, like, you had it at bat. What do you think? What'd you learn? Whatever. It also made me really a lot better player, like, to make those decisions for myself, like knowing like, dude, you need to work on the curveball. You're not hitting your curveball. Like, and then you're like, well, I can do this. And then you start evolving into whoever, what player you are with guidance, not micromanaging, but with guidance. And that's very hard because men love to fix things, especially daddy. So you're like, how can we fix it? Let's buy her new bat. How can we fix it? Let's get her a new, pitching coach or whatever. And really the idea is just like my dad was like, dude, like, it's nuts. We need just to get better at our craft. And that's kind of where I felt like I am now, even with like my job. Like, there are some things that I am like extremely humbled by when it comes to coaching high school girls. And I just thinking to myself, like, okay, I'm a life learner. I'm a life learner. Like, I might think that I know, and in this case, I don't. And so that's pretty humbling. I mean, it's also like having like a Christian background and having that like total pride taken away from you. Like, at times you're like, whoa, that was hard because that was so humbling. I thought I was gonna win, or I thought I was gonna be right, or whatever. And then you come back and you're like, this is what all that was about, and you're just like a better human because your dad was so great. And I have a great mom too. So
Right.
just shout out to moms too, don't worry.
Yeah,
But my mom wasn't there catching bullpens.
exactly.
But yeah. So I would say
So,
making that, like, I would say, like, from 10 to 12, you're kinda like this as a parent, and then you're hoping all that work pays off. So in high
yeah,
school, you're just like, "Hey, let's make the good choices that you know you need to make." And that's how
yeah,
I kinda saw it.
that makes sense. It sounds familiar, right? I mean, I was on you pretty hard lace, and then at 14s, I just kind of backed off, and that's when you kind of you started picking up steam as far as a pitcher.
Yeah. I mean, because 14s, I transitioned to playing for Mark Campbell. So, like, he was the epitome of like hard work and dedication. And if you don't do this, you're not going anywhere. Like,
Right.
so that's, I mean, I started at an early age knowing that if you don't put in the hard work behind the scenes, you're not going to be successful and you're not going to be where
Right.
you want to go. Yeah.
Right.
So,
So, pivoting to your coaching now, right, and your TikToking. So, how do you balance between coaching on the field and creating engaging content on TikTok? How do you balance those two?
Some weeks are so easy. I'm like, dude, this is the best. Like, I'm killing it on TikTok. I'm killing it on the field. I'd be the best mom ever. And there are some weeks like I don't have it. And like, I've learned kind of like if I'm pressing or I feel like I'm like the content's not coming out as easily, like, I don't really write scripts. I just kind of like shoot from the hip kind of thing at times.
Right.
And if it doesn't feel organic, I'm like, dude, they're gonna know. Like, I'm just like, I'm not, I have like probably 1,000 videos in my draft that I just need to delete because I'm never going to post, you know?
Oh,
But a lot of things happen on the field and I'm like, okay, this is so good for people to hear. And there's some weeks that are just crazy and you just don't have time, you know? But I do believe that, when you're doing it for the right reasons and you're not trying to be fake or, you know, whatever, like it'll all just come out, you know, like experiences you're having lately, like I would just always write them down and then you can kind of like go through those and say, cause you're not going to remember, like you're going to be like, oh yeah, it's a great idea. And then you're like, what was that? Some of them, okay. Some of the, like, what I do with my system is, like, I text myself, like, what the idea is, right? Like, "Oh, you know, catcher screaming," or something funny that happened. I'm like, "Oh, that'd be hilarious if we did that," right? And then I, like, read them back. I'm like, "I'm curious what I meant by that text because it doesn't make any sense."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's like an ebb and flow. I also think people are not interested in hearing about softball stuff in December. I think there's definitely like a peak, you know, from February to June and July. And then it just kind of drops off because people get into volleyball and other sports, and that's fine. Because then that gives us as content creators time to analyze what we're doing, what's doing good, what's not doing as well as we want. Just like any sport, right? You have some off season time. And then you hit the ground running, and really what I do in the off season is I network with other people. Like, did y'all go to the softball convention this last year?
no.
Y'all gotta go this next year. It's in December, it'll be in Dallas. It's a great networking, just like you go up to vendors like, "Hey, I do content, like, what you know, what are y'all trying to do with your product?" Especially if you believe in the product, you know, and you
Mhm.
look at it, you're like, "Dude, that would help a lot of people." Or like, you know, get with Devin. Like, I don't know Devin other than on social media stuff, and she's
Right,
now one of like, well, some of the girl like I text her probably like every couple days, you know, like, "Look at
right.
this, like, this is crazy," you know? So, it is such a fun network to it really
Yeah,
is.
very cool. Well, speaking of that, if someone wants to listen to you on TikTok, social media, what are some of the ways that they can contact you or they can watch you or listen to you? What are some of those things? What
Yeah.
platforms can they get see you
So
on?
yeah, the majority of the stuff is on TikTok. That's where I post the most some of my stuff most of my stuff, I mean. Now, Instagram, I'm working at it, but, I feel like it takes a whole other format for the videos to look like Instagram-y, I guess the best way to put it.
Right.
So, just the time of that takes, and I don't know, I like the TikTok app better in editing the videos and all that kind of stuff in there. I think
Yeah.
it's easier for me. Um, we are trying to go live on TikTok every Monday when Sherry Naldini gets back into town. And we just talk about football stuff, like whatever she has going on. She's a recruiting service. So she has a lot of good insight on recruiting stuff and like things that are happening right now. I mean, she's helping kids get recruited to any level, any sport, and she's in it. I mean, you think that you know a lot of people in softball, you with Sherry, because she knows all of them, and she has, like, a billion little tidbits that she can tell people how to get recruited that aren't taking advantage of her services, you know?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, and that's called Softball with Margo, right? That's your
Softball
TikTok,
with
right?
Margo, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Very cool. Yeah, that and the recruiting part too, because Lacey was part of the Bat Busters and their whole thing when they would go to like a showcase was they're gonna come to me, we're not gonna go to them, meaning they wouldn't put out flyers and they wouldn't put out, those little things that coaches would take and circle that,
Oh, the
they
QR
never
codes,
had
yeah.
that. Yeah, they never had that because they had certain colleges that would come watch them anyway, and then
Yeah, they didn't need it. I
they didn't
met
need
it.
it. So
Yeah, and
so
that's like a
for those that are not in the Bat Bus organization or Mercado, how what kind of things do you recommend for them to do as far as putting their name out there and all that kind of stuff?
it all depends on, like, kinda where you live and what your resources are. I mean, there's a Texas girl that lives literally, like, 40 minutes from my parents' house in, like, the hill country, and she flies to California, you know, every month to practice or play with her team or whatever, and she's on the bat bus. I
Yep.
think, like, that's an extreme, don't get me wrong, but there are so many like, talented programs within probably a 3-hour driving distance that you can get on. You just have to start doing your research. you know? And if it's not like feasible for you to get on those teams, then you got to start networking and getting to know some of these people and no telling what people can do for you. Maybe like if it's a financial thing, then maybe they have financial aid for those teams. But if you sit there and lean on the excuses, you're going to be the exact same spot, just a little bit more bitter, you know? I think that there is so many people in the softball industry and like community that are so more than welcome to helping people out. I mean, it is a very like middle class, like, like we have the same interest. So we're friends immediately kind of thing. I know that there's a lot of teams in the Texas area that have also different levels. And I don't know if the Bat Busters do have that. Like, cause we have like a gold team, bombers, like, silver, plat, whatever. And that makes a big deal. Like a big difference is being on certain teams and like having that last name on the end of that team, you know? So, I think you have to do your research and I think you need to start reaching out to people. Also, getting with, if you don't have any of those things, getting with the recruiting service where you can maybe guest play or get on the field somewhere where you can get in front of people because that's the only thing you can control is like what output you're, putting out in the game.
Yep. Cool. I appreciate it. We're gonna end it here. Lacey, you have any final thoughts or any?
I don't think so. I was just very, very insightful with like the recruiting process, how it changes from year to year. It changes every year. So I think the girls and parents like listening to this podcast could benefit from a lot of what you said. And I mean, and I really enjoyed having you on.
Oh yeah. We have to do it again and not at the Texas Aquarium downtown Houston. Okay. And that's on me. We actually, like we had family in town and like, I told them I had this at 2:30. I was like, we'll be back in time. And then all of a sudden it was 2:30. I was like, we ain't gonna be back in time.
Yeah, no worries. No worries. No, I appreciate you having you on, Margo. Again, it's softball with Margo on TikTok. You can just put, and then she has I think a link to like a website and you can check that out as well. But thank you for coming on and yeah, we'll have you on again and talk about some other stuff because I know you have a lot of content. So I think we just touched upon a little bit of what you can bring to the table. So I appreciate that.
When we need to meet up again because I think, I don't know, I think Texas might take it this year. OU is they're like dibble dabbling and they're doing a good job, but I think there's going to be maybe Washington. I don't know, but like it's going to be different this year. I don't think it's going to be like a clean sweep. That's my forecast.
That's your forecast? Okay.
Yeah.
It's
people
recorded.
Are hoping for it.
Go ahead.
People are hoping for it. I mean, my team, I think we were in Fullerton and it was during the Louisiana game and we were like watching the score. We're like, come on, Louisiana. But it's so funny that everyone's kind of rooting against that team when, I mean, I played with pretty much like half their starting lineup on the Bat Busters. So it's like, it's
don't get me wrong. Super talented, but I think there might be a new champion this year. I think so.
Possibly.
So,
hey.
Well, thank y'all so much. I appreciate it. And thanks for being so patient and kind with me. And let me know if I can do anything for y'all on my end, like whether it's a question you'll have or maybe like a collab, like maybe me and Lacey could do some stuff like player to coach and then coach to dad and like how people can navigate that water, like how to have those conversations, but be professional about it. And I'll have to brainstorm some stuff, but maybe we can start like a group text. Like, oh, that's a good idea. This is something I've struggled with and blah, blah, blah,
Okay.
That kind of stuff would really, I think, go a long way.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Margo.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later. I
Thank you.
appreciate
All
it.
right. Take care. Lace, love you.
Love you.
Bye.